most of the anti-Semitism that we find in North America is, if not started, centered in our universities today, across North America, in the most unbelievable way. And the way that this is manifest is primarily through something called BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanction of the State of Israel. Now, the BDS movement was started by, in part, an individual by the name of Omar Barghouti, who, after the Durban UN hate fest against Israel, saw that this was a great opportunity to see if we can get something onto campuses. And it had the surface of saying we're going to be boycotting either Israeli professors or Israeli products or whatever. We're going to be asking universities to divest from companies that either do business with Israel or are connected somehow with what happens in Israel. And we will sanction God knows what. So it became known as the BDS movement. Now, the reality is that Barghouti is a very, very smart cookie. Mm-hmm. And if you read what he says, there's no intention whatsoever to be boycotting anything, and I'll get back to the boycotting. This is a movement whose sole purpose is the elimination of the state of Israel as a Jewish state. Elimination of Israel, but as a Jewish state. And it has this cover of saying we're going to be boycotting. Let me talk about the boycott, because we had a BDS motion and referendum come to UBC, not this year, but last year. It was brought forward by the Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights group. And a group that on my first day on campus, I approached, introduced myself and said, how if we very quietly get some of your people and some of my people together and begin a conversation? And the response back was, we have a no dialogue policy with you people. I started laughing. She said, did I say something funny? I said, well, most people who know me know it's pretty hard to catch me sort of speechless, but you really have. I said, okay, I've got a question, but it's a dilemma. She says, what's the dilemma? I said, well, if I ask the question, we'll be engaging in dialogue. She said, go ahead. She didn't have a sense of humor. I said, why don't you want to talk to your enemy? If you don't want to talk to your enemy, who do you want to talk to? Is there no possibility of any type of resolution, or do you just want to be angry? I mean, we're here on a university. This is about dialogue. This is about discussion. And she said, I will give you an answer. If we talk to you, we will be condoning your murderous genocidal ways. That's the end. We're finished. And with that, she put her book up, and that was the end of the conversation. So that was day one of what they're tabling, all the various clubs, and you want to be a vegan, you want to be a Buddhist, you want to be a Jew, you want to be a Christian, all the various groups out there they were tabling. Second day, Jewish response, what do? I go back to the table, see if someone else is sitting there. Unfortunately, it was the same person. So, despite numerous attempts to have some type of dialogue with this group, nothing happened. Now they come out with what is to be a referendum about boycotting, divesting, sanction of Israel. Well, now they're tabling out, and I go up to the table again. This time, they can't really ignore me because it's a public venue. And we've asked, by the way, what are the products that you plan on boycotting? Because you're not listing them in the referendum, which quite honestly is simply not honest. You're asking students to what, sign a blank check? I can give you a whole list of products that you should boycott. I don't think you will, but anyway. So they wouldn't give it. So one day I see that they have 3 products that they're thinking they want the university to boycott. The first one is Caterpillar, machinery. And I said to the young lady, you know there's a new student union building that's being built right behind here. Yes. Well, I actually know that a number of the machinery that we used in the excavation was Caterpillars. So are you going to therefore be telling the AMS, the Alma Mater Society, the student union, that they cannot move into their new building? Well, she didn't answer. I said, let's go on to the second product. Motorola Solutions. I'm assuming that you're wanting to boycott Motorola Solutions because the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, used some type of computerware with it? Yes. Are you aware that Motorola Solutions is responsible for the operating system of all Androids? So unless you're working for Steve Jobs, you're going to be saying no Androids will be allowed on the university? Again, no answer. I said, let's go on to your third product. By this time, it's like, Mr. Get away from here. I said, this is an interesting one, Sabra hummus. Why? We decided to use an Israeli product. I said, great. Now the Strauss Dipping Company, which is the major holding company of Sabra hummus, in 2000 sold 50% of their shares to a small American company called Pepsi-Cola. And I noticed that 60% of the vending machines here at UBC are Pepsi, Frito-Lay, or Quaker Oats, all the same company. Are you saying that the university should now boycott a company that you have an existing contract with, which, by the way, is against the rules of the AMS? And again, of course, there was no answer. I said, look, I've got a list of companies that you guys can boycott. Let's start with Google. Let's go to Intel. Let's go to Microsoft. Let's go to the fact that 45 to 50% of the generic drugs in Canada are from Teva, which bought out Novaform a number of years ago. Okay, tell the people. Put down your laptops, put down your cell phones, because you can't use them anymore because the R&D, the research and development, a great deal of it is taking place in Israel. If you want to boycott something, let's go after, boycott. Of course, there's no interest in that. But what happens, and it's amazing that on a university where you think there's going to be thought process, where you think there's going to be some critical thinking, that this doesn't sort of come up. Now, let me make it very, very clear to everyone. We at Hillel have a bottom line when it comes to Israel. And it's a very simple bottom line. Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state in safe and secure borders. Beyond that, you want to take Bibi to task? Stand in line. You want to criticize the government? You want to criticize the army? You want to whatever you want to criticize, go ahead. As long as we understand that we're not talking about the elimination of the entire state of Israel. So here's my next question. In your new state, is there any room for Jews? Now, she knew that I knew that she knew that this was going to go. What was the nuanced statement she was going to make? And her answer was, perhaps. Which clearly meant
no.
No. So this is a nefarious movement whose goal it is to make Jewish students on campus feel tremendously vulnerable, and is succeeding.
Do you find that the role of Hillel has changed since
Absolutely.
its beginning to one of perhaps more activism?
Our purpose, and it was an important question that you asked, have we changed
Yes.
over the years? We've been at UBC since 1947. We're in a new building since the last 4 years or so, but we've had a presence there. And when Hillel first started onto campuses, you have to understand that many, many universities, and most in Canada, had a quota system as to how many Jews they would allow onto their campus. My father of blessed memory did not get to go to the University of Toronto and get into medicine because of a quota system. These quota systems existed in McGill and in Western and in UBC and right across. When, after the war, things started to open up, there was a feeling that, gee, the Jewish kids probably should have something on campus that they can call home. Not that they're going to spend all of their time, but if they're feeling vulnerable. That was how it began. Isn't it interesting? So some 70 or so years ago, it began as a place of sort of a safe haven. And over time, where there was more and more acceptance and doors opened up, and now Jews were not part of a quota system in medicine or law, which they were right across the country, or dentistry. And now we started to see Jewish professors, and then we started to see Jewish heads of departments and even presidents and so on. Things changed dramatically. And so the Hillels became more social. When there was a time that we were trying to get the Jews out of the former Soviet Union, there was a sense of activism there. When we were trying to get the Jews out of Ethiopia, there was an activism there, and so on. But by and large, what we're dealing with now, and we have a multiplicity of activities that are going on, cultural, educational, religious, and so on. One of the main things that we're there for, to act as an advocate, if and when we need to, in addition to everything else. Because you see, what BDS does, and people don't necessarily understand this, if you're not on the campus, you wouldn't understand this, is that it opens the door for professors who already have a bias against Israel. And I'm not saying every professor out there has a bias against Israel, but there are significant numbers. They feel that there's a sense of permission now when BDS comes to a campus that they can make even more outrageous comments in their classroom. So I have to put out a statement every year to the students, and we're on 7 different campuses, that if you come across something in your classroom or with your TA, okay, in a tutorial or whatever, let us know. Come and tell us. You don't have to suffer in silence. Now, a lot of students don't come, and that's an issue. And those that do, they'll come, they'll talk to us, and then we will have this conversation, finding out exactly what is going on. I will send my staff into classes to monitor what's going on, because we want to hear it and witness it wherever possible firsthand. And I have a very, very good relationship with the ombudsperson at UBC, who reports directly to the president, that if there is this situation in a classroom where a student is feeling vulnerable, we're prepared to begin a process. Now, the problem, however, is, and we always tell the students, we know you're over 18. Maybe you want to think about this, and maybe you want to discuss this with your parents, because we're not going to go and start doing things without your permission, and we're not sending you in to talk to the professor or the department head alone. We will be with you. Let us know. And certain ones come back and say, let's go ahead, but many come back and say, I'm concerned about the grades, I'm concerned about my future. Okay, there's an unbelievable pressure and weight and deference that is given to universities and professors, in which a lowly student feels, how am I going to go up against this individual?
You see, I'm going to stop you for a minute, because that is a debate I've heard on the McMaster campus between non-Jews, actually, who are supporting the Jewish students, where one side says the Jewish students need to be doing more, because during Israel Apartheid Week, the boycotts and divestment votes, it's causing a problem, an increased problem with anti-Semitism on campus. And some are saying, well, the Jewish students need to rise to this occasion. But others are saying, no, these students are there to learn and to study and to advance like everybody else. Why do they need to be in this role to begin with? They need advocacy.
Okay.
I'd like to know where you stand on that.
Okay. When a woman is sexually assaulted, we have a tendency to ask the woman, what did you do to promote it? Which is a disgusting question. Why are we asking the victim? Why don't we ask the perpetrator? So there is a notion here, and we've seen it within history, that if they're coming after the Jews, chances are we're not going to be the last ones that anyone is coming after.
Yes.
And so this is not a Jewish problem, it is a societal issue.
A human rights problem.
Exactly. In the same way that sexual assault is not a female problem or issue, it's a human issue that needs to be dealt with. So yes, maybe some more Jewish students need to get involved, but there needs to be an awareness out there of exactly what is going on, that when BDS comes to a campus, this isn't about free speech, this is about hate speech.
Yes.
And that is not a Jewish issue exclusively at all.
So clearly there have been successes, as you just mentioned. However, I feel at this point that we cannot be going easy on the university administrators.
I agree. Our responsibility is to make sure that that communication is open and ongoing, and is there to hear our concerns.
Are you satisfied that there's growth?
Well, you know, right now I have to see who the new sheriff is in town, as to what that approach is going to be.
Now, as an executive director of
Yes.
the USB, you're seeing other, I'm sure you hear the reports of other campuses
Right.
as well.
Right.
And if one were to look, let's say, since the Durban 1 conference,
Right.
have you seen any progress of Hillel in the goals of Hillel to try to battle anti-Semitism on the campuses? Have you seen anything positive taking place?
I mean, yes.
I mean, the presence is a positive, but
yes, but it's an ongoing one, and it is exhausting. That we want to be there doing more than simply trying to figure out a defense or trying to figure out an offense with regard to this, as opposed to what other student organizations are doing, which is exploring this topic or that topic. I mean, which we do, but it also weighs very, very heavily on us, especially the staff, okay? We don't sleep at night when this happens, because we're worried about the effect that it has on these young minds. And so, have the Hillels made a difference? Absolutely, absolutely. It's an ongoing battle, and I mentioned before the interview started, about 8 weeks ago, Hillel directors started reporting in emails that they're receiving these horrible facts of swastikas and anti-Semitic rhetoric that is now being sent to university administration offices. And every week, another 3 or 4 executive directors saying it's landed at our university, it's landed at our university. And about 3 weeks ago, it landed at McGill, and 2 weeks ago, it landed at SFU. And I showed you the picture, it's swastikas. It's basically calling for...
It's disgraceful, but the bigger question is what's being done.
Well, I can only tell you that this has been turned over to the RCMP because this is now in the area of hate literature.
Hate speech, yes.
There is no nuance that this is anti-Israel. Very clearly, if you're tired of the immigration policies of Jews, it's time to get rid of the Jews. Okay, there it is, 2016. We believe that this is originating somewhere in Europe. What's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, we wait for reports as to what the police can tell us. But this is now happening across North America.
What can Zionists overall do? I mean, Hillel is a Jewish organization,
right?
But there is a growing presence of Christian Zionists on campuses as well.
Right.
Is there room for the Christian Zionists to be working with Hillel?
Absolutely, and we received support from certain evangelical groups on campus. So that when such a motion or a resolution, a referendum comes, to absolutely join it. But I think that Christian Zionists who have been tremendously important and helpful and supportive need to be in contact with their members of parliament, need to be in contact with the heads of the parties. I tip my hat to the conservative resolution that was supported by the majority of the Liberals, was not supported by the NDP, of an anti-BDS motion. We want to now see if there are any teeth in that, but that remains to be seen. But those are important steps. They are significant steps. And when these things happen and there's no response, the other side sees that in itself as a victory. The other side sees even bringing it onto the campus and allowing a toxicity on the campus to exist.
And fester.
As a victory. This is not what university is supposed to be about. And we wouldn't accept this if this type of bigotry was directed towards Aboriginals, towards women, towards individuals of color. Why are we the canary in the mine? And that's the question that I ask the administration time and again, and I'm not getting answers, but we'll continue to pursue and continue to question.
Rabbi, I'm going to close on that note, that big question of why. And I think a great guide you gave us is to take responsibility, because this is a human rights issue. I want to wish you all the best in your work with Hillel.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing that information and the encouragement to get on board to do our responsibility as citizens.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Please share this video, and on YouTube, click the button below to become a subscriber.